So last week I told you I was going to give up on my own opinions, or at least try. My new slogan is going to be opine less, listen more. I was thinking of having it put on a t-shirt. Giving up on my opinions has been pretty hard. I have more of them than I realized. On Monday, when Alan and I were driving out to the book mill in Montague, Mass. For our annual pilgrimage there, I realized I had opinions about the colors of the leaves. I had judgment about the foliage. It took me a little practice to change my opinion into something more neutral, something along the lines of every year the fall colors are different, Elea. And the simple fact that the trees are, in the words of Mary Oliver, turning themselves into pillars of light is pretty amazing. And then when I pulled into the Dunkin' Donuts parking lot the other day and had to gingerly squeeze my car between two enormous SUVs, one of which had a sort of snorkel tube curling off the outside of it. Have you seen this? Like the car was about to drive underwater. I found I had some opinions, not just about the cars, but even about the drivers of those cars, who, of course, I have never met. I know nothing about them, and maybe they are going to be driving underwater soon. So I stood in the coffee line and I breathed through my opinions, and I was able to come up with a simple statement of fact. It is hard to fit into a small parking space when there are very large cars on either side, one of which has a big snorkel pipe thing sticking off. It's been like this all week. But my decision to work on giving up my opinions this particular week has also been a big relief, because I find I don't have much to say about what is happening in Israel and Gaza. And at a time when religious leaders and politicians and a lot of ordinary people too are stating a lot of opinions in a lot of places, I'm working on letting go of mine. I think most of you know that I am Jewish, and the longing for safety and homeland resides deep in my bones. Alan's 16-year-old grandson, Aaron, was in Israel for much of the summer. And I am so deeply aware that any one of the hundreds dead, the thousands injured, the 125 taken hostage could have been Aaron, and that every single one of them is indeed someone's Aaron. And at the very same time, there is much about Israel's policies I don't support. And now in Gaza, there are also hundreds dead, thousands injured, and more than half a country displaced. As my friend Ellen, who's also Jewish and whose mother survived the Holocaust, puts it, this is an ancient conflict, now being fought with terrifyingly modern weapons. All week I have been reading the opinions of others and noticing how people feel unseen and unheard, and worse, deeply hurt by whatever is written or said, no matter what it is. A colleague of mine posted something that I thought was quite honest and humble, saying, I am neither of Jewish or Palestinian descent, and I am definitely not an expert on the politics and history of this region, so I'm going to just stop talking and listen. And then someone posted an enraged response, the kind that are in all capital letters, saying, "How can you not speak up at a time like this? If you don't speak up, you're siding with the oppressor." And I recognize the feelings of helplessness and grief that are most likely underneath that rage, as well as the fear of a rising tide of anti-Semitism. I feel those things too. But people of Palestinian descent and Muslims worldwide feel the very same fear. And I don't think it helps us to simplify what is not simple. And sometimes, maybe more often than not, I don't think it helps to offer our opinions. If you have Jewish friends, you might want to reach out to them and offer to listen, because they're probably struggling. And if you have Muslim friends, you might want to reach out to them and offer to listen, because they're probably struggling. Maybe it's better for us to be quiet. To be quiet and to pray, whatever form that takes for you, for all who are suffering and for innocent people everywhere whose lives are so deeply impacted by decisions they did not make. Maybe our small acts of kindness and our daily efforts to do what is good and just and loving in our own small lives, maybe that matters more than our opinions. And maybe listening does too. The kind of listening that will not offer easy answers or solutions when there are none. As I said, I say everything we do is important, but I really mean it. And one of the most important things we do here in this faith community is to invite each other, to call each other into the practice of deeper listening. In our small groups, but also in committee meetings and coffee hour and parking lot conversations, we ask each other to listen without offering advice or trying to fix it, to listen without debate or counter-argument, even if we are absolutely sure we know better. But in truth, no one knows their own story better than the one who's telling it. And in truth, none of us are broken. None of us require fixing, though we may be in pain or struggling. And when we begin to listen, assuming that the person we are listening to is whole and needs our presence rather than our opinions or advice, it changes us. Listening without forming a response in our minds as the other person is speaking. Listening with an open heart. It's a practice. It's something we can learn and get better at. But about 99% of it is just showing up, being quiet, and paying attention. Paying so much attention that our own opinions stop getting in the way. When we listen like this, it allows our life to touch other lives. It creates space in us to take in another person's story and to let that story move us. And we're changed by it. It makes us kinder. It also reminds us that we are not alone in the human condition. This is what the poet Rosemary Watola Traumer is speaking of in her poem called Only a Few Things Matter. She writes about listening as a kind of digging in which we are hollowed out and filled at the same time. And here is that poem. Today we gather around the listening table, and I notice how one woman speaks of grief, and her notes ring in me as if I were a cave made for echoing with the songs she sings. And another's words strike me as if I'm a bell made to be rung by her voice. And when one woman says, I'm a digger, I want to shout, I'm a digger too, but I don't. I listen. I listen and notice how the act of listening is its own kind of digging in which we are hollowed out and filled at the same time. Around the listening table, I let the spade of joy and the shovel of ache and the spoon of awe do their good digging work, though sometimes it hurts as they excavate in me what is real. And sometimes it thrills me to hear another speak, filling me with what I too know is true. And of course, being listened to, having someone listen deeply to us, well, that is one of the most healing powers I know of in this world. As John Fox puts it, when someone deeply listens to you, it's like holding out a dented cup you've had since childhood and watching it fill up with cold, fresh water. But it doesn't take special skills. It doesn't take being a special kind of person to do this kind of listening, I promise you. Recently, I had someone thank me for a meeting we had together a while back. And she said, what you told me at that meeting, what you said, was really profound. I can't stop thinking about it. Now, I think we can honestly agree that I am not known for my profundity. I have fine qualities, but being profound is really not one of them. But I thought, well, maybe I hit one out of the park there. So I asked her what I said in the meeting because I wanted to be able to repeat it. And she answered, well, you told me that what was happening to me really stinks. Now, stinks is not the word that I used, but I don't like to swear from the pulpit. But that was it. That was the profound thing that she couldn't forget and kept thinking about. I said, that stinks. But it wasn't the words, I suspect. It was just the holding of her story and the simple acknowledgement that what was happening to her did indeed stink. And that is something every one of us can do. So I want to give you a little spiritual homework this week if you choose to accept your assignment. Listen as often as you can. And especially when you want to change someone or fix them up a little bit, listen instead and pay attention to how that changes you. Imagine those around you are holding out their sweet, dented cups, and your listening is the cold, fresh water that fills them up.